We are now recording. And I don't think you need to have it recorded to clear your space. It would be useful, though, to have it recorded to recognize that the 6 boxes that you kind of unearthed some ideas, some awarenesses, and some energy. Remember, emotion is energy. We're going to be using that to reframe, refocus, and connect you to your highest and best authentic DNA. Now, remember, I am not the person who is changing your DNA. I'm the person who's putting out a template, holding that template of your DNA for you to change. So it is not really possible for other people to change people's DNA without their agreement. And that's sometimes where we run into trouble, is the agreement, right? We agree to things we just didn't know we agreed to, and all of a sudden, our DNA has shifted and changed. So anything from last month that I can help you with so that you can benefit more this month. If you do not know how to, you can go down to the participant box on your screen. And if you click on that, there'll be a place for you to raise your hand. Okay. And if you're on a different device, Renee is the queen of devices. Renee, if you know of a way for people to raise their hand. No? Okay.
I shoot, I can't, I'm on the participants and the arrow up, it says invite and Alt L. I don't see how to raise my hand.
Well, Sandra, since you're on my screen, just raise your hand.
Oh, okay, fine.
But you might be on another screen, and if one of my other helpers are on another screen and you see someone literally raising their hand, just chime in.
Okay.
If you don't, just click on participants, not the arrow, and you should be able to see it.
Oh, okay. Just last night, I listened to the last month's, and I was starting to work on those 6 boxes, and I forgot what regards meant.
People or circumstances or events that you hold in high regard.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Anybody else? Any other thoughts from last month where it was just like, whoa, I didn't quite get that? And if you weren't here last month and you didn't get to the boxes that we're talking about that were on the Facebook page, not to worry. Your DNA, when we talk about quantum leap, and that's not our topic for today, but just so you feel reassured that in quantum theory and quantum leap, which is the reality of our experience on the planet, you will be able to pick up from others frequencies that you can choose from. So even though you may not have done it as precisely as you wanted to, you'll still get the benefit of the adjustments. And then if you have opportunity, I would go back and look at the boxes and then do it in kind of the revision mode rather than provision. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Oh, good. This is going to be so much fun. So today, the concept that we're working with that I really would like you to feel like you could get your teeth into and understand is this idea of logic and love. And that's the topic of this. Are you dancing with logic or love? And, many of us would probably even argue that love is everything. Well, yes, it is. When you get to the planetary level of matter, where energy becomes matter, logic really needs to be applied. It does. I belong to a Unity Spiritual Center, which is a body of knowledge, a group that has beliefs that thought creates matter. I believe that as well. Where I part company with that thought is that when we get into the matter of the planet, and we are looking at, let's talk about disease, because most everybody who works with me is concerned about they have an illness, a disease, a trauma, something, right? People rarely call me up to say, hey, my life is great. I feel wonderful. Just wanted to let you know. Usually call me up because there's something that isn't working well for them, right? So when we look at those ideas of the illness, disease, I cannot honestly believe, and I have investigated over and over and over, that it always comes from people's thoughts. I just do not find that to be accurate. People can certainly change the course of their illness. They can create different pathways for the disease. They can resolve things through their thinking. But when it comes to being in the natural world and the planet, I've had a lot of questions from people about vaccinations. One of my answers is this, is we have fast-tracked the vaccination investigation from the FDA for all the kinds of reasons everybody knows. But any company, any corporation can put a ton of chemicals into their carpet glue and no one's taking a look at that. And so it goes into an office with 1,000 people with the windows shut and air conditioning, and people are breathing that. So I think if we go to the concept that thought creates matter, yes, it does, but that is more of the societal thought that it's okay to allow that. It is not the individual thought that can change that, because you may not even have known when you walked into that office that there was a new rug there. You might just have found that after a month of working in that office, you forgot that the new rug was installed, and now you have breathing, you have headaches, you have menstrual difficulties, you have arguments with your husband and or wife. It can create so many different disruptions in your hormonal cycles, in your chemical cycles. So I'm saying that to say this. When we look at logic, let's not throw it out. Okay, people say, "But oh, you're so spiritual." It's like, well, I am, because I have absolute belief that whatever we're going through, whether it's Monsanto not being required to take Roundup off the market, I have the absolute belief that I am here for a purpose. It's not that I have belief in Monsanto and I don't have belief in the society, and I don't believe that anybody's going to rescue me from Roundup or whatever I would see to be impinging on my health. So make the distinction, excuse me, make the distinction between thought creates matter. It does. The thought that is held in your mind for the period of time with the amount of energy and passion that you give it is what will manifest. If you do not know what to focus on, will you be able to change that matter? No, you really cannot. I mean, even in this moment, I'm sitting here and I'm checking my electromagnetic frequency, because around about 4 o'clock every day, there's telecom goes through. There's a satellite that goes through, hits over Lakewood, right? And I feel it. So I'm kind of going like, okay, I'm still solid here. I'm still steady. Who could spend their whole day trying to figure out what's impacting me now? No, we wouldn't be living our lives. So the point about, are you dancing with logic or are you dancing with love, is the recognition that we will bring them together. We will bring them together. We will find the balance of this. And this is what our people who've been called to be on the planet at this time have called to do. We are here to have feet on the ground. And I'm sorry to use that term. It's been so used over the past month for horrible circumstances. But I also want people to recognize that we have feet as well. Those of us who are coming from a place of logic and love can move forward just as effectively as people who might be coming from places we don't agree with, creating circumstances and events that are difficult and painful. So how do we do that? How do we do that? I mean, we have somebody from New Jersey here. I'm looking at Marty, and I know the degree of breast cancer that occurs in New Jersey or the Bay Area in San Francisco. We have Mariko here. She's from San Francisco. The occurrences of breast cancer in those two areas is exponentially higher than any other place in the country because of the runoff from the herbicides and everything that they use in San Francisco for the growing seasons. And then in New Jersey, and Marty, I don't know what all those stacks show in New Jersey, but you can smell it in the air when you drive by, right? So when we start to measure out this depressing message I'm telling you, and you're saying to me, wow, what happened to expectancy of joy? It's like, how does this quite fit? Well, it actually does, because the joy in this, the expectancy in this, is the awareness that your body is still under your management. You may not know what's happening to it. You may not know why it happened to it. I still don't know why I carry an extra 50 pounds. I'm at an IDK with that. God and I keep talking about it, and it shifts and it moves a little bit, and and things go this way, things go that way. But my faith in that is where I land on the love side. And my faith in the understanding that as I lean into my personal experience on this planet, I'm the one that balances it. So if you saw the graphic, it was a picture of the brain on one side and the heart on the other. And the part that is most useful to you, that some of you may have this information, but I'd like to anchor it further, because as we're moving, your DNA is already shifting and changing. And mostly it's in your neurological pathways. And if you are a person who is able to image easily, it would be very fun for you to be able to image little star-like shapes. They might look like little blasts of light. I sent an email to some friends with the Seattle Needle 2021 or 2021 New Year's Eve celebration, where they were sending out all these fireworks, and it was disturbing to them. And I found it like entrancing that all these flashes of light were going off, because we really, as I'm looking above the field here, we really are more light than we are matter. We have more space than we have density. The space between your molecules is bigger and wider and more resilient than the molecule itself. So that when we think of things as being solid, we're really working in the wrong concept of logic. So move that piece of information out. Because if you're thinking of yourself as just solid, it's very contracting for your tissue, and it doesn't allow the energy to move very quickly through you, and it also causes contraction in your circulation. Okay, so if you can imagine yourself, just if you've ever watched fireworks before, and if you resonated to that and been excited and like, oh, look at that, oh, find that space, because that is the expectancy of joy frequency that you are going to land in today. Oftentimes we start with the density of our thought, like, what about vaccines? What about the glue in the rug? What about what happened over here? What about what happened to my other friend? We often have to start with that to clear it out, to allow space for the new frequency to enter in. So if you're finding yourself getting very, but what about, but what about, I want you to start to identify it as a thought virus. If you have persistent thoughts that are, and I'm not going to say negative, because I don't believe any thought is negative or positive, it's just low frequency. Some of the persistent thoughts that I've heard people say over the past week were about politics, or certainly about the pandemic, certainly about their own children. Are my children actually getting any kind of education? Do my children even need an education? There are so many different things that people have that they can't get out of their head, so to speak. So we'd like you to dial that down a little bit, recognize it. We often have to call our brain on things. I had an opportunity to say to somebody yesterday, it was their brain was just really intruding in what they were trying to understand. And she says, but my brain is the best part of me. And it's like, yeah, well, but remember, what part of your body told you that? It's like, it was your brain that said it was the best part. So we really, you need to back off a little bit. Marty, I see your hand. What's up? You want to unmute?
Yeah, that you brought up thoughts. In the last 7 days, I must have heard the thought from different people. I have I'm blocked, or I have a block. So.
And what are you seeing in those folks? Are they in your particular physical area?
Some are, some aren't.
Okay.
Either a block or I'm stuck. I feel stuck.
Yeah, you're exactly in the pocket. Thanks for giving me that language, because it isn't something I thought about in terms of how to help people move from that place. But when I see these lights that go off, the lights that flash in your energy field that tell me that you're activated, if you are stuck, as Marty's brought up, the glial cells, which are the actual neurological cells in the body, the glial cells are glue, glial glue. They are the holding patterns in the body. So when your glial cells go into a holding pattern, like if I always roll my shoulder forward, if I'm a head out person, or if I tip my pelvis the wrong way, or if, think of certain gestures that you use repeatedly, your glial cells will be holding that. Now, that's the physical anatomical part of it. The metaphysical part of it is if you are being challenged to move in a different way, if you are being called upon through your soul, through whatever your divinity is, whatever your belief system is about that energy that woke you up this morning, right? That is where that holding pattern will stick, right? It will hold you because your survival from the brain, from the logic side, isn't in accord with going like, I know better than you, logic. That's when the soul isn't given enough space to speak. Because if I'm trying to move something through my body to manifest it in the outer world, whether it's health, better finances, better relationships with people, even I've had some people call me up like, I don't know whether I should even sell my house or move somewhere else. Is that people are trying to put the choice on the outside rather than on the inside. So let me be more clear. If you feel blocked, be aware and beware of making choices on the outside. If you're feeling blocked and your tendency is like to do something out here, I need to get a divorce. I've heard that I don't know how many times over the past since the pandemic started. Now, some of that might be valid. You've hung around with that person closer than you have ever, and you might find like, I don't know why I ever did this. That's different than just wanting to make a choice because you feel stuck. So check with the logic and go, where am I really stuck? Am I stuck in what I'm holding on to? That's those 6 boxes, right? So Marty, I would suggest to them that they line those boxes up and just start to unload into those. But where am I holding on to? What am I still holding in the container of this physical body that's creating blockages? So that the access of the brain and the not the physical heart, when I talk about the heart, I'm talking about coming from a heart space, not the physical structure, okay? And when I talk about the brain, I'm really not talking about the brain, I'm talking about the mind. And the mind is in every part of you, and the heart is in every part of you, every molecule, which they actually didn't know back in 1970 or so, when I started doing this work. Endorphins hadn't been named yet. And now everybody's like, sure, yeah, we all know about endorphins. So I want you to know that what we're going to be talking about now is something that is going to change your life if you choose to use it. And this is neuropeptides. Neuropeptides are not news either, okay? Usual spelling, Neuro and peptides, Peptides. Peptides are pieces of amino acids, pieces of proteins, okay? They're distributed throughout the body, and they're distributed differently for each person depending on how you hold yourself, that's the glial cells, and how you think gets distributed to these neuropeptides. So these neuropeptides are called the molecules of emotion, and they are the space that you play in between the heart and the mind is the emotions. Who knew? After all these decades of people trying to suppress their emotions, not have their emotions, change their emotions to be like someone else would want them to be, there have been so many ways in our culture that emotions are not supported, allowed, appreciated, honored, that now we're recognizing that neuropeptides are the structures, the molecules of emotions that access the parts of the brain and the mind and the heart at the same time. that they are the ones that make the translation between, well, my logic tells me I don't want to be pregnant. My heart tells me, yes, right? You have had those experiences, maybe not the pregnancy part, okay? And certainly not for me, thank you God, no pregnancy today, or even for the rest of this lifetime, putting that out there. So as you're looking at what you are focusing on and what you do choose to create in this life, and let's just say it's your highest and best DNA, and I'd like you now, since you've heard it, and everybody's kind of organized now, pick the part of your system, if you will, that you would like to have corrected. Now, I don't say heal because I don't believe in healing. There's no such thing as healing. There is health. The word health means wholeness. That's where it comes from. That's the structure of the word. Health means wholeness. So bringing someone into wholeness is not what I'm here for. What I'm here for is to help hold the container for you as you bring yourself into wholeness. So finding those parts and pieces of yourself, it might be your soul, it might be your mind, it might be an experience that you had in this lifetime. And if you believe in past lifetimes, it could be that. There are so many impacts to your system that rather than spend our time digging around trying to figure out what caused what, I suggest that we use the energy of the present time to correct whatever the effects were. Move into correction rather than dig around trying to find the inception. The inception is the start of something. And oftentimes when you dig around trying to find the inception, you're just causing more trauma. You're going back into the situation over and over and just digging deeper and deeper and deeper, or like spinning your wheels in the snow or the sand, depending if you're in Miami or Cleveland, you know. So as we're looking at this particular neuropeptide, neurohormonal, emotional structure, remember, this is an actual physical structure. So when Candace Pert discovered this, I first had contact with her in the mid 70s when she was working on trying to find the receptor in the body. That's brain is a receptor. There's a receptor there for marijuana. That was her body of knowledge. And she was studying at the National Institute of Health at the time, a researcher, biophysicist. And I had an opportunity to meet with her, and I was just like, oh, this woman is like the best, right? And so I followed her very, very closely throughout her career. She passed a couple, 3 years ago. Interestingly enough, about something that I would love to talk about, but it's off topic. But anyway, so Candace, in the process of trying to find this surface receptor for marijuana, discovered neuropeptides, the molecules of emotion. No one knew they existed before that. Before that, people thought that if you dropped a hammer and it hit your toe, the message, if you will, sorry about the lights there, the message would need to travel up the nerves, go to the brain for the brain to say ow, and then travel back down. And now we find that that's not accurate, that neuropeptides are the mind, and they're in every molecule. They're everywhere in your body. Each person has them distributed uniquely for them, and that is where they meet each other. That's where the heart and the brain meet each other. That is where your thoughts become matter, your matter becomes thoughts. And we're going to do a little meditation at the end where matter turns into thought, thought turns into matter, just to help you seal in the changes that you've created today, okay? So when we look at the emotional state of our culture, and if we look at health, and we look at carpet glue, and we look at people who are just wonderful models of everything you would want in your life, we have these dividing forces of energy pulling our emotions around, okay? So get that picture that, you know, you can be just like the wind, you know, if you're in a very windy place, you can just be buffeted by all of the different emotional energies that are out there. The piece that's most useful is to create a filter, okay? You would want a very strong filter in this particular culture. If you're feeling overly impacted by well, pick a number. You know, there's so many different things out there. I don't want to name them again because we We finally got those soothed a little bit. But, you know, if you find there's something like in that thought virus that we were talking about, or those areas where you might feel that you're blocked, when you're looking at how that is impacting you, know that those molecules of emotion are being stimulated outside your awareness. Why is this important? You can only create from the level of awareness that you're currently at. If I do not have information about, oh gosh, that there's going to be a wonderful event down on, you know, town hall today at noon. If I don't have that information, there's really nothing I can do about it. It's my level of awareness. So bringing your level of awareness up to its highest point is what we're doing now. And when you think about awareness, recognize that it is a viewpoint, okay? It is a viewpoint where, as we look at not the ideas, but the sensations would be better. As we look at sensations in your body, know that your neuropeptides are being stimulated. Sandra, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, you just took your mic off. I wasn't sure if you were going to ask.
Oh,
You're putting your ears in, huh? That's okay. I can mute it for you. I got it.
thank you.
In the experience of emotional stimulation, look at it again as stimulation. So if you're looking at these fireworks, some people might be going like, oh my God, I hate this. Let's get out of here. It's way too loud. There's too many people. Other people will be going like, yay, this is great. This is wonderful. Let's get closer. Okay. Everyone has their own attunement to awareness. So first of all, allow yourself to have it. There's truly no right or wrong in this. Although Candace Burke did find that men had more neuropeptides in their chest and genitals, and women had them evenly distributed throughout their body, which I thought was hilarious. It's like, finally, science proves what we already knew. Okay, we knew that. You know, women generally will want to put their head on a man's chest. There's that connectivity. We automatically have these connections and this knowledge in these 30,000-year-old bodies that tell us what we want and what we need and how to satisfy it. Here's the news today that not so great, manageable, but not so great, is that we now have a system and a culture that the biggest threat to your integrity, the biggest threat, when I say integrity, that's your health, the biggest threat to your integrity is too much information. Too much information, way too much information. And it is information that is not really even information, it's just noise. The noise level of opinion, the noise level of decisions required from you, the constancy of needing to make decisions. Should I go to Mary's thing at 2 o'clock? Should I do this? Should I go here? Should I go there? I went to buy and I was online, which seems to make it easier, which I don't think it does. I went to buy a remote control because my remote control for the TV that I haven't used for 2 years, I thought, hey, I'll use it. I'm here. Why not? Let me get a remote control, right? The choices were so overwhelming. I had to ask Renee, how do you pick out a remote? You know? I mean, and that's just a remote control. If I was truly challenged and had to make a healthcare decision, well, healthcare I feel confident in. Some other area I don't feel confident in. Buy a computer, yeah, that also goes to Renee. Areas I don't have any competence in, I can't even imagine how someone manages their healthcare in the Western medicine system that cannot, quite honestly, it cannot. So provide the support and the consistency, the information, the education, all the things that humans need in this TMI culture. So you have all this information you've been given about vaccines, right? Are you equipped to make a decision? If you are, I would love to talk with you. Jerry, what's your question?
Well, first I'm going to answer
that question you just asked. I feel like I am equipped, and that's my own intuition and what I choose to do with it. So that's how I am equipped to make my decision.
And let me distinguish that for people, because you're not acting on information.
Correct.
Well, we can just end the class right now. That's really what it's all about. Okay, thanks everybody. This is great. So like, just stop thinking about information. Go to your intuition. Give me a call. Let me know how it rolls. No. Yeah, I mean, right? Okay, so what was your question now?
My question was actually, I just wanted, I didn't catch, you said molecules are stimulated outside your, did you say, where, do you remember what you said? You said
Awareness.
That's what I thought she said. Thank you. That's what I thought she said. That's what I'd written down. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, Jennifer is here because I said, "Well, listen, Jen, I'm not going to be listening to anything I say. So please." Thanks, Jen. Yeah, it was outside my awareness. Okay. So the point that Jerry Lee makes is just so, it's so rich, because that is our, as I was saying, Jerry Lee, 30,000-year-old bodies. That's how we survived. We operated on our intuition. We operated on our body knowledge of the planet. We operated on my feet are on the ground. I know the trees. I know the food around me. We didn't move more than 20 miles from where we were born, generally, correct? So it wasn't that we had to encapsulate and understand these huge pieces of information. So in the treatment and the care and the feeding of this 30,000-year-old body, first of all, recognize and have some compassion for your body, that it is really doing the best it can to stay at a speed of energy that it was not equipped for. Because the evolution, which is what we talked about last month, talked a lot about evolution and the evolution of even the cultural, well, I guess we would call them things that helped us be promoted in this culture, how they actually pushed us to an edge where the body can no longer have the capacities to do it. I believe, and I believe Jerry Lee does too, that we are being pushed there so that we let go of it. I believe we are being pushed past the point of being able to understand our world purely through a lens of understanding, and go back to the place of deep self-examination, deep belief in a, whatever you call that, universal energy. You could call it the happy life of trees. It's not a matter of what you call it or what it is even. It's a matter of you being able to access it and use the energy to create the amount that you need to, and I'm tempted to use the word combat, but that is really not it. I think probably the better word is harmonize, to use the energy to harmonize with all of these biological burdens that your body is exposed to while you're on the planet. So you have biological burden, that's your logic that we talked about. The access to balance that out is finding in yourself, what do I really believe? What do I really value? What am I passionate about? What keeps me here on this planet? Because we could all leave, anybody can leave at any time, So knowing what is your passion, and what is your passion is sometimes hooked to your purpose. I find mine is. I find other people are passionate about things that maybe they don't fit their purpose so much, but I then wonder if maybe their purpose is just to be happy. I think that's allowable. You ever met people who they're just happy? What do you do? Oh, well, I'm this, that, really. They don't, they don't see it as important, Oh, I've been a barista for 10 years. Oh yeah, it's fine. Okay. And probably everybody who comes in contact with them feels happy for having had that molecular exchange. So what we're going to do now, we split up into rooms, and there might be 3 to a room. I'm not sure. We'll see, 2 or 3 to a room. The part I'd like you to think about is, if you had opportunity to do those 6 boxes, you had opportunity to go with what area was a little hard for you, what area either you couldn't come up with what goes in there, or the box was so full it pushed the other 5 out of the way, you know? And if you had a box that was so filled with resentments, I suggest you just stay in the room with me and we'll talk. Okay, because resentments are probably the most toxic thing for the tissue in your body, okay? So as you go in, the first person to speak is going to be the person whose name has the closest to the beginning of the alphabet. So just go from A to Z. Okay, so if your name is Alice, you go first. If your name is Zelda, you're last. If you're Renee, you're somewhere in the middle of the pack, okay? And then what you're going to speak to is your emotional, and you don't have to display it, because I know displaying emotions to people you don't know is sometimes a challenge. I would love if you could, because that's the hurdle that we as a culture are being invited to master, to be able to be authentic and present with each other in whatever the mood state there is, in whatever the thought form there is. Okay. Now, I'm not inviting you to complain. No complaining allowed. Okay. It can't be, I had this terrible, whatever, whatever. No, 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 no. So help each other out. If you have, you kind of fell into this, I'll never change, nothing will ever get any better. That's not helpful. You're going into the same DNA pattern. So what you're going to be doing, and what I'm going to be doing while you're doing that, is you're activating the neuropeptides. And I am helping you shape them into the pattern that is a higher frequency than the one that you started out with. Does it sound like a fun game? Anybody? Yeah, Jen.
Hey, I'm sorry. I must have blanked. I don't know. I missed it. What am I talking about?
I think it's fair that you weren't listening to what you were saying, and I wasn't listening to it either before.
Yeah, I was listening, but I didn't hear it.
Totally get you. Yeah, you're going to be having the experience of when you go through those 6 boxes. If there was one that was something that you just blanked on, as you did now, I think it's a perfect example. Or if there was one that just was so filled. Okay, so speak to that. And the idea being is there's generally, I can't even say generally, there's always a feeling attached to it, right? There's always a feeling attached to it. And even if you can just say the feeling, if not demonstrate the feeling, because sometimes what happens is we know the feeling word. Like I can say the feeling word, but I'm not necessarily attached to it. The reason for this, because some of you, your brains are going like, I don't know why I want to do this because I don't know what it's going to do. Okay. Because the neuropeptides, that's Annie. Thank you for owning it, Annie. Yes, I'm not going to do this until you explain it. Okay. When the neuropeptides are not stimulated, okay, those emotions, that's what blocks us, Marty. That's your answer. That's what's sitting there. Okay. And the breath that we take when we cry, the breath that we take when we argue, just before the breath that you take when you're going like, oh, wow, just after you were frightened, just after you were exhausted, that goes right to the brainstem where most of the neuropeptides are gathered. Okay. So, you have an automatic download, if you will, the ability to translate these neuropeptides. Now, I know that's a longer answer than I gave, Jen, but I think Annie was, maybe a couple other people too, were looking for a better explanation about what am I really doing here? So that's not the explanation of what you're doing. That's the benefit of what you're doing, is that you will be activating these neuropeptides, allowing them to open up any storage cabinets that where you've been holding, remember, holding patterns, glial cells, holding. Okay. Breathe. That's why there's so many classes on breathing, just breathing. But I find that educating people on breathing is really boring and people don't want to do it. They're kind of like, unless you're sitting there with them, breathing with them. Plus it takes self-discipline and hardly anybody I know wants to do that. So, it's kind of like, let's do it together and have more fun rather than try to figure it out on our own. So is that better, Jen, or is it TMI?
I think I have it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Sandy, are you reaching for no? You good? Okay. All righty. I'm going to go ahead and put in breakout rooms. You'll receive a little white box on your screen, and what you will do is you will say yes. And if you say no, I'm not quite sure what will happen. I don't think it'll be painful, but you might end up back here in a room with me, and we're never sure if that's painful or not. So your invitation is there. Person with the first letter of the alphabet speaks first. Hey, Heather. There you go.
Okay, beam me up, Scotty. I'm ready to get out. Funny.
You are now back in the main ballroom. So how was that experience for you? Some other folks are going to take a couple more minutes. Some groups are more chatty than others. How was that for you, Sandra?
I was not chatty because I was not prepared. I didn't know about the 6 boxes. So now I know where to find them. So next time.
Yeah, I'm wondering how I can do better in getting that information to people after this class, because there'll be things after this class too. Uh, the link that you were sent, the invitation you were sent, does it also have connection to the Facebook page, which is where all that's at?
No, I just found out it's on Facebook just now.
Okay. Okay, I'll make sure that the next link that Renee sends out also has a link to the page.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So in listening to other people, and I'm looking at the DNA strands up here. It's all everything we're doing today is neurological. The it's funny, Sandra, you've given me the privilege of knowing you well enough in our call. Sandra and I are on in a mastermind group that you didn't even need to do that. It's all like right here. You already you're good at that. How about you, Corinne? How was that experience for you?
It was good. I just I misplaced my boxes. So I don't know. But I know what I'm dealing with, so I guess I could still talk about that. I don't have an ability to get on Facebook.
That's
I
okay.
had an account in and I closed it completely. So
Yeah, I only use it for business. So, I mean, I understand. It was only another opportunity for someplace for me to post text, large chunks of information. You know,
yeah.
those were kind of harder to send out in emails. But I think I can, I think what I'll do is make a Joyful Expectancy MailChimp group, and I can send out large chunks of information that way too.
Oh, okay, good.
And it's
A what group? Say that again.
a Joyful Expectancy group on
Oh.
MailChimp, which is, it would be an email that would come to your inbox.
Okay.
So, I think since I have people's, I think when you sign up, you give me your email, yeah?
Yes.
Sign up. Okay, so yeah, so I have your emails. What I'll do is I'll just gather all those together like Jack's, put them together and send out an email that has like kind of update information, and maybe even check in with people and see how they're doing mid-month, because the support that people are needing around emotions is much bigger than I expected when I made this group. I had no idea all this was going to be happening. It was like, ooh, okay, How about you, Jess? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so I
Swallow there.
talked about regrets and resentments
Oh,
as my 2 boxes. And I noticed with my resentments, it was mostly focused on like the outside world as opposed to the inside. So that was interesting.
yeah, that's good to know. So as these pieces of information, I'm going to go ahead and call back the other folks. As these pieces of information come clear to you, feel reassured that you don't need the boxes to know what you're working with. It's coming to a certain level of awareness of the emotional state that you're in. Those 6 boxes are purely a way to heighten your awareness, because my belief is that anybody who's on a call with me is pretty aware already. You are already working in that realm of emotions. You're working in that realm of understanding. You may not know exactly what you're dealing with, especially when you're looking at the outer impacts, but you certainly do know that something is going on, you know. And I think the piece that I would have you look at after this experience is, did that feel more contracting, or did it have a sense of freeing for you? Were you feeling more tight around the emotional content, or able to be more loose with it? Anybody willing to share on that? Just unmute yourself and speak your speak.
Well, I've been trying to give myself a little more, be a little more compassionate with myself, because yeah, I've been really emotional and fearful and some anger in there, you know, and it's okay to have the feelings, but I don't, if I'm okay with it, then I can relax a little more, you know, because I was getting on a double thing where not only is, say, anxiety bad, but then you're mad at yourself for, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
You just have to, I just have to let myself feel what I feel, have a good cry about it. I'm getting really teary these days. And then just, you know, we were talking about that. I think it was maybe Sandra, about how we were just deep breathing and being in the moment, and that's helpful.
That's really wise. That is so wise, because you know, the access to the neuropeptides is in the deep breath. And the next thing that we're going to talk about, Sandra, is the being in the moment and why that's so important to what the experience is now. So really want to thank you, Corinne, for allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I have had periods of tearfulness that have felt completely unrelated to what's happening in the moment. It just, it's like, well, okay, you know, I have used more Kleenex this month than I have probably in 6 months before that. You know, that's how I tell how I'm feeling. How much Kleenex am I using? You know, and the part that I find that is useful for me is to make sure that for any period of tearfulness that I have, that I also have that compassion, that I extend that mercy to myself. Because what Corinne really said in a very beautiful way is the having the feeling and then being critical of the feeling is exactly the opposite of where you want to go. And yet so many of us were brought up either by very unskilled parents, or just because of the culture, where we were not allowed to express the feeling, much less identify it, feel supported in it, and then be able to, what I would call, resolve it. Miss Jerry.
So apparently I was confused that there was homework. However, when I looked at the boxes again, Roots was the one that resonated for me, which did not come as any surprise, and has been something that I continue to, like, this is not me, this is not mine. My perception of and my perspective of what I was born into. And like Roots for me, it just felt really, really heavy and thick, which again does not come necessarily as a surprise. But it's interesting, as you and Corinne are talking about this emotional piece, I have found for the last month, different like TV shows that I'm watching are very meaningful, and stories for me are a big thing. My story, somebody else's story. And I often connect to the fact that knowing how many people are born into something. And as I'm watching these shows unfold, knowing that their pains and their experiences are often something that is not theirs, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I find my empathy, and I find my moments of tearfulness, and like understanding that, like, obviously these tears are cleansing, and that's the beauty and the joy of that experience. And I know, Mary, you and I have talked about like what my platform is. And to me, there's catharsis and release in, and even just talking about it right now, that feeling of that heaviness continues to release, and I'm filling that space with joy and being able to release, this is not me, this is not mine, and being able to do that for myself and for others at the same time.
Absolutely. I think That is a great summary of the process of how this is an overused word, but probably because it works, transforming emotional content of a story, okay, into the neuropeptide that clogs up in our holding patterns, and then finding a way to release it. I was talking with my granddaughter who's 16 now, and she says, when you say that, I think of, every time you say that, she says, I think of releasing it back into the wild. And I'm like, that actually sounds pretty good for releasing it back into the wild. The wildness of this world of emotions. I think she probably has a good idea on that. So thanks for the summary on the process. That's a really good one. Anyone else willing to share what your experience was in the breakout rooms? You can just unmute if you like. Or do you think,
I'm usually an open book, so it was very easy for me to share my regrets and my resentments.
Mhm.
And now the issue is releasing them.
well, that's the through line, Sandra. And thank you for bringing me to our next topic. Okay. If no one else has a question, I'm going to go ahead with the next topic. Otherwise, I would love to hear your comment now. And if there's anybody on the other screen that I can't see, please just chime in.
I just feel like mine was roots, like Jerry Lee's, and but like with confusion with it, because sometimes I feel very disconnected sometimes to my family or my past, and then, but yet at the same time, I also feel very tied by that, and I think it affects some of my decisions and things like that.
Wow, what a great example of the logic and the heart, right? The connectivity and yet the confusion. Confusion is just FYI for folks, confusion is not an emotion, it is a thought form. It is not, it's not an emotion. You can't find it. You can't find it in the emotional body. You can always find it in the brain though. And I often think, and Heather, I'm not saying this is necessarily your experience, but I find that it's a common experience and certainly one I've had myself. I get confused when I don't like what I'm feeling. If I don't like what I'm feeling, my brain will give me the comfort of confusion. It'll allow me to be kind of like, gee, I really don't know. Gee, I don't know. Why should I feel nauseous every time I think about going to my family outings? Well, I don't know. Gee whiz, gosh. I'm saying that as an example, and I'm not saying that's your case, but it looks in your field that sounds accurate. Does that feel accurate to you? Like you're protecting yourself from your emotions?
Could be. That sounds, yes, like something I probably do.
Well, and think of it less as something I would do than something I've been taught. Okay, because I really doubt. I have, I worked in labor and delivery and I worked with children for years. Never has one of them come out with a need to hide their feelings. No infant goes, oh, I can't really show them how I'm feeling about this.
Oh, that was a pattern in my family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when Jerry Lee talks about looking at something, whether it's through the lens of a movie or a book, or, in quantum community, we look at each other. We share those experiences so that we have opportunity to go, oh, wow, as a loving mirror, I see myself in you, and now I can correct that. Or I see in you an experience that I need, and I can take that in. So, your family is undoubtedly going through the same thing. If they're not a very expressive group and withholding or transforming, I find a lot of families are transforming this particular age of grief that I believe we're in. They're transforming it into anger. It's coming out as anger or irritability or the need to withdraw and just get separate from each other because of the fear that if I say the wrong things, I might end up getting kicked out of the family or shunned by the group, or, there's a lot of different ways that can roll, but, I would encourage your brain to stand down, thank it for its efforts, thank it for protecting you, right? And honor that experience, that you've been given the protection from, well, maybe saying the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person, right? Because we don't want to encourage more conflict in families. We want to be the positive agent for balancing and bringing things into correction, right? So let your brain know, cancel that. Let your mind know that thanks for the work. Let me have my feelings now. Let me just have my feelings, because you have the support now. When you made this pattern, you didn't have the support. So please remember that, folks. When you made the patterns that caused the problems in your life, it was because you didn't have the support. If you had the support, you wouldn't have made the patterns. Just simple logic there, yeah? Everybody's doing their best they can all the time. From the level of awareness that you have, you are doing the very best you can. Don't ever allow yourself to feel criticized by yourself or anyone else that what you're doing is not enough, because you are doing everything you can from your current level of awareness. And as we move into that next topic, the concept that we talked about earlier about health, meaning wholeness, that's the physiology, anatomy, physiology, form and function part of it. I'd like you now to move into the metaphysical, that you're really talking about holiness, the holiness, that being whole in the physical form requires a certain level of holiness. And the level of holiness that you're willing to allow into your life will be the level of wholeness that you can create in your body. So the level of holiness that you're willing to allow into your life is the level of wholeness that you can create in your body. Now, this is physics. This is straightforward physics. This is the body's ability to take in energy, but if the energy is not available, the body will drop down to a lower frequency of wellness or wholeness, if you will. Let me say it another way. If you don't have enough energy, you can't power the vehicle. And if you are intending for your vehicle, because you're here, I'm sure you're intending your vehicle to be its highest and best, right? That you must then have enough energy to power it. Yeah, Tori.
So the question that I just had, and maybe you already answered it.
Could you be a little louder, Tori?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Still a little soft.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No, for some reason you sound like you're under a filter. Usually yours is quite strong.
Oh, that's weird. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise the volume, folks. So if it's just so I can hear it, then I'm going to drop it back down. Okay, go ahead, Tori.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. maybe maybe you already answered this question, but like this was my question. So, I wrote down everything under the, the 6 boxes. And, of course, everything makes me happy other than one regret and one resentment. And actually the one resentment and the one regret are things that do go through me and through my head. And I try to just switch to positive thoughts to turn them off, but I do need to resolve them. And I really need to get out of this class how to do it.
Yeah, you have 2 thought viruses that are running concurrently.
Yes.
Let me just see, because you know what? There are 5 other people who have the same experience in terms of thought viruses. They're a little bit different viruses, but they are definitely physical, mental, emotional. They're spiritual viruses. So you're right in the pocket about what we're talking about here. So when we think of spiritual viruses, and thanks for this question, Tori. This is a really powerful way to introduce this concept. Okay. And check me as I go through if I'm not making it clear. But the energy behind thought viruses being spiritual, remember that thought creates matter. Your non-physical energy creates thought. So we're up a level now. Okay, we're up a level above that in terms of the density. There's matter, thought, emotions, and now we're up to your metaphysical body. We're up to your psychic body. We're up to your astral body. We're up to that energy body that, it in itself it's a years of study. The part that's most useful, though, when we look at thought viruses, is to look at, okay, where in your spiritual body are you out of alignment? Where are you out of alignment with your authentic self, with your true self, with your God self, with the universal energy? However you would want to language that. There is a part of you that is out of alignment. And Tori, we actually spoke of it yesterday. Are you willing to share that? We were in a group yesterday, Living It Out, which is part of the quantum community. Can I share a bit of that, or do you want to? You're muted.
You could share it. I think it's a good example.
Okay, yeah, that will keep you from having to move your microphone back and forth. The essence of it was about judgment and how, not that her history is what's important. What's important is when any of us land in a body on this planet and have judgments about others or judgments about ourselves, it creates a kind of matter, tissue matter, and emotional stuff that goes along with that matter that creates a holding pattern. And what's interesting to me is that when we judge other people, we think it's actually going out there. We think it's our judgments going out there because our eyes in this body, it's very deceptive. We think because we're seeing it, it's out there. But in point of fact, the judgment is happening in here. The tissue in here is the one that is being affected. It isn't affecting the tissue out there or the person we see. And in fact, one of my friends in AA says, it's like taking poison and expecting it to kill somebody else. I thought that was a really good way of understanding it, that it is not what I'm thinking, and I'm creating it in my own body. So uprooting the judgment and replacing it with joyful expectancy. And I'm going to retread for folks maybe who weren't in the first group, that the difference between expectations and expectancy is this. Expectations are your attachment to something turning out a certain way. Your expectations are you saying to God, universe, this is what I want, and this is what I want to have happen. It is 99.9% a setup for disappointment, because the ideal way to live in the world is expectancy, meaning you create an energy of expectancy that what will come to me is mine for my highest and best. I have a joyful expectancy that what will come to me in every moment conspires to my good. That's the holiness. That is the holiness where we say that no matter what comes to me, it is mine to be, do, give, or have. And in that, I greet it with joyful expectancy that even if it doesn't look good on the surface, I used to call it ugly gifts, like, oh boy, this isn't wrapped real nice, but I know inside there's a gift, and it's my opportunity to use times like this and in my thought forms, my holiness, to go into that walking in faith rather than fear. And choosing faith over fear is what I think many on the call right now are struggling with at times. Choosing faith over fear. And that kind of faith is not faith in other people, not faith in the government, not faith in the stability of the dollar, not faith in your husband, your wife, your sister, your brother, not your family, not your business. That's not where you put your faith. I don't even have faith in my body. My body's exposed to things daily over which I have zero control. How much energy do I want to spend each day going through it and figuring it out? Some days, not at all. And some days I work on a little bit more than others, but so Tori, it goes back to the uprooting, and I believe it is in your roots, because you were really lighting up when Jerry Lee was talking about roots, and then when Heather was talking about roots. I believe it's in your roots. What do you think?
The one regret and the one thing I'm resenting.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
So you think like the one thing I regret and the one thing I resent is in my roots?
The one thing you regret and the one thing you resent is based in your being judgmental. Whether it was in that circumstance or whether, sometimes what I find in my own experience is that something will come back to me that's unpleasant, and sometimes it comes back again, and then it comes back for a third time. I need to start looking at going like, okay, what in me is causing this to feel unresolvable? What in me is not allowing this, no matter what I do, to be done with it, if you will. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I guess the one part I'm judging myself, but I didn't know any better at the time.
Yeah.
And then the other one is I'm judging a person for their just lack of whatever, And then I'm
dig
judging
yourself
myself
deeper every time
again
you do
because I didn't have the tools and the knowledge that I have now.
There you go. And that's where the holiness lives. Coming from that place of what Corinne was talking about in terms of self-compassion and allowing the mercy of our own community. This community is sending you so many vibes of mercy and compassion, because they're going like, been there, done that, girl. Right? And Jerry Lee is saying, yes, I love this. Thank you for sharing too, because the surface, bringing it down to the molecular granular level, which is what I do, is your surface tension on your molecules are now starting to get an upgrade. This is where your upgrade occurs, where you're allowing yourself to accept mercy. You're allowing yourself to free yourself from the judgment and bring in a level of love, a level of love that you have not experienced before in those areas. And everybody on this call has that. You might not be aware of it yet. You might not know where that location is for you, but you're being vulnerable and allowing yourself to know what you know and to own it is going to what's the word? Not release. Reform.
That's true.
Yeah. Reform.
But I think the thing is like, I agree with, I need to have self-compassion. I need to show myself mercy. I need to love myself more. In the one instance, I think the problem is just in the one instance of regret, it's like, do you just love yourself even if that other person will never forgive you?
Wait a minute, I'm going to put you on pause here, because the perception that you're coming at it with is what's causing it to stay there. You're seeing it as a problem.
Oh, okay.
When I perceive something as a problem, I'm saying it's broken. And if I'm the one with the problem, that means I'm broken.
Okay.
That's not sturdy ground. Go back to where I was operating from my highest level of awareness. I was operating from my best level of love that I was capable of. Therefore, I choose to release anything that's a lower frequency. I don't live there anymore. It's like you're still getting mail at the old address. You don't live there anymore. You don't need any of those energies that say that you are a less vibrating being, loving child of God because you judged, whether it was yourself or others. It's the freedom you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make more sense now?
Totally.
Yeah. So move away from problem. Cancel that word. There's no problem in your life. There is no problem in you. None. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I understand. I think the key here is just to say what you just said. If that ever pops in your head, that I was just operating from the highest level of awareness, therefore
Absolutely.
whatever was at a lower frequency, in that time, and I'm not in that time or place anymore.
That's right. Yeah. And you can even, sometimes I shorten things, get it deep with the bigger concept like you did. And then when it gets to the place where you feel pretty confident in, I start shortening it to, it's like, yeah, mail's coming from the wrong address. You can just put it into a shorthand thing, because
Okay.
your thought form then will control the emotional state. Good job. That's nicely done.
Mary,
Yeah. Mhm.
I want to say thanks to Tori. That was really helpful to me.
Yeah.
And what I learned in that process is that when I'm able to take that in, like really deeply into my heart and forgive myself, then I can just immediately begin forgiving others who've wronged me from their level of awareness. So, sometimes I think I have to forgive others first, but for me, I think it seems like the true deep self-forgiveness, it's another one of those, does it happen outside first or inside, or so anyways.
Yeah. And I think the answer, does it happen outside or inside first, is yes. The concurrency with what you all have shared today, and we're landing here, we've got about 4 more minutes. The concurrency is to understand that what you have shared has changed the molecular structure of your tissue by virtue of your attention. This is physics. This is not metaphysics. Metaphysics is the holiness. That is the gift of forgiveness. That is the mercy. That is the willingness to be vulnerable and share and connect with others. That's the holiness. The wholeness, as it drops into your tissue, is allowing yourself to accept and welcome the change in your tissue as the surface tension of the receptors in your neurology physically change. They are altered. Now, if you're stubborn, as I have been in the past, or refusing, or oppositional, or defiant, I'm familiar with all of those, just saying. Not anymore, but I have in the past. It'll just hang in superposition in your field. It'll just hang out there until you're ready and allowing it to drop. Let it drop in. I say let it drop in now. Let yourself enjoy the benefits of having devoted 90 minutes to being in this loving bath of people who have sophisticated awareness and willingness to be present to the loving compassion that we all deserve. It isn't a matter of even need. It's part of what creates your body. So you either take the high level stuff, or you say, no, I'll just sit here on the floor and take the crumbs from the table and feel miserable and not good and have problems, which when you then look at it like problems, then you're stuck, because it's like problems mean you're broken. So understand that having emotions does not mean you're broken. It means you're whole. And having them in the context of mercy and compassion means that you're holy. So bringing the balance of the mind and the heart together, which was our goal today, I hope it served you as well as I intended. And if there's any last comments, I'm happy to hear, happy to stay. But if folks have a time frame that they're due, it is 3:30 now in Eastern Standard Time. So if you need to hop off, feel free. I'll stop the recording if anybody would like to stick around and share or ask questions. I am available. Otherwise,